All right. So today we're talking microdosing and plant medicine or psychedelics, also known as 101. I'm going to go over my story. I'm going to go over the agenda really quickly here for those of you, especially who could not make it to live. I want to make sure you know what we're covering. It's going to be an hour, possibly longer, because I want to answer questions for those of you who are here in real time. Okay. So this is not just about microdosing. This is about plant medicine, and what we're going to cover today, a little bit different than last time. I want to talk about the science and spirituality of these sacred plants. And you'll hear me say sacred plants probably multiple times, and I'll explain more as we go along. The health and yes, even the wealth, the financial, the relationship changes and benefits that I've experienced in this journey over the past 2 years. It went far beyond mental health for me. Some key do's and don'ts, how to find a reputable source for your medicine. This can be tricky and dangerous. And then the difference between micro and macro dosing, which one might be right for you, and even how to do both if you feel called. And then also some of you are just here to learn and be educated because it's not for you. And I have learned it's not for everyone. In fact, I have learned so much that it's not for everyone. We will have Q&A at the end, so hold your questions and make sure you put them in the Q&A feature, which is at the base of the Zoom. And we'll also share how I help people, how I can coach people as a plant medicine woman and transformational coach and guide. So really quickly, I want to also let you know, if you stay all the way till the very end, besides getting your questions answered, I do have a gift for you. So I always like to leave a little suspense. So I always like to say an open mind leaves a chance for someone to drop a worthwhile thought in it. Mark Twain, especially since I've actually been having some really heated discussions lately with people both in and outside of the plant medicine space. So I just ask that you have an open mind, because there may be some things that I say today that could be pretty earth-shattering, jaw-dropping, maybe mind-blowing, and possibly even something that might trigger you a little bit, depending on where you're at in your journey of ascension and awakening. But just ask that you have an open mind today. So the reason I turned to plant medicine 2 years ago, April of 2021, I was dealing with a lot of grief. I had friends who, at that time, I had 8 friends. Now it's all the way up to 12, had committed suicide between 2006 and 2019. I lost both my parents and my brother between 2018 and 2020. I lost myself in workaholism, binge drinking, multiple bottles of wine per week. I felt completely uncertain in my marriage. I felt like a worthless mom, and that my kids didn't really get to know me and the best parts of me. I felt lost in my career, even though I was making tons of money. I wasn't feeling fulfilled. Then, of course, came the pandemic and figuring out how to homeschool and be, a different kind of parent and being home all the time, trying to build an online business. All of that happened 3 years ago now. And I was just totally numb to life and on the hamster wheel. And I don't know if anybody can relate to any of that, or if you know someone that may have had a lot of this kind of stuff, but that's a lot. Being human is really complicated. It can be really painful at times, right? And I was really stuck in my head. So I had a mentor, and I know at least Gail, there are a few of you have seen him on my podcast, Franco Romero. He's going to be on my podcast again on Friday, talking about the state of the world on the lunar eclipse full moon day. This week is a really intense, big week for those of us who, are into the awakening and the ascension process and studying all that's going on. And even if you're not, you know that there's a lot of energies, a lot of shifts going on, and it's to help wake us up, to get us out of our heads and into our hearts. So first of all, I acknowledged I was stuck in my head. I was always chitter chatter, a lot of busy mind, a lot of what I call monkey mind. And Franco recommended, even though he had never done ayahuasca or psilocybin, he's the one who told me in December of 2020 to look into ayahuasca and psilocybin to help get me off of that hamster wheel, to help start the surrendering process, to start to go within And I read this book, How to Change Your Mind, What the New Science of Psychedelics Teaches Us About Consciousness, Dying, Addiction, Depression, and Transcendence. And that was me. I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, I've got some addiction issues. I want to expand my consciousness. I'm pretty depressed, even though I was faking that I wasn't. I was really depressed. And I wanted to transcend all of this stuff. I wanted to take my life to another level. I read his book and it gave me confidence. And I knew a mushroom shaman. I knew here in Southern California, I'm surrounded by plant medicine. So I had lots of options and lots of choices. So I just went with the first referral and the second referral that came to me to help me get out of my head and get into my heart. And then I also recognized and wanted to share just a little bit of like the science and the language with you. Psychedelic itself, that's actually not the word that I prefer to use, but it's the most common, but it means mind manifesting. You can actually literally change the grooves in your brain, the default mode network. Again, hopefully you're taking notes, or maybe you've read the book, you understand it. But the book was the first thing that really helped me better understand the default mode network and how we attract whatever is going on inside of us, right? And not just our head brain, but inside of our body. So a lot of trauma impacts our brain, a lot of autopilot default mode network, like you get in your car and you drive home, but you don't remember how you drove there, right? That's the default mode network. And if it's holding on to a lot of trauma and a lot of challenges, it's really, really hard to see the forest for the trees and to be able to move forward in life and to really manifest your best version of yourself. So what I discovered, even though I started, because I wanted to, in quote unquote, fix my brain, I wanted to wake up the deadened parts of the brain, because at any given time, we only use 10% of our brain, right? So there's a lot of unconsciousness happening for us. And so I wanted to wake up parts of the brain, but I learned that there's so much more that these sacred plants can do beyond our head brain and our ego, the mind chatter, right? The dictator, sometimes we call it the inner critic. That is part of the default mode network as well, that's trying to protect us. I wanted to wake up the being part of the brain. So you see on the slide here, the right side is the being, that's the feminine energy brain. That's the side, that's the creative side, the intuition, the artistic, the feelings, the imagination. And again, it is the feminine side of the brain. I had completely shut that side off due to trauma, grief, and then ego, default mode network, and was really stuck in that hamster wheel of doing, the analytical mind, the logic, the numbers, the execution. That's the masculine side of the brain. So if you didn't already know that, or if you forgot, I forgot about that. Franco actually helped remind me of that. And I realized, wow, I didn't trust my intuition anymore. I had shut my intuition down, as well as my creative side of myself. And then there's the other part of the human mind, also known as the unconscious. I prefer unconscious, even though Joe Dispenza and a lot of those guys out there, they talk about the subconscious mind and how he was able to heal himself with, kind of like navigating that mind. But most people really struggle with this because it's scary to go into the unconscious mind. The unconscious is the shadow work, right? It's the shame, the guilt, the fear, the trauma. And that's what I discovered. My ego mind was so loud because I was programmed at a young age to not want to feel the scary stuff, the shame, the guilt, the fear. It was bad to feel that, right? That was my experience, my perspective as a child. And then even as an adult, getting into sales, never let them see you sweat, fake it till you make it. Even in sports, I did my first Ironman triathlon with strep throat. That's how crazy I was, right? Because I was like, no. Once you commit to something, you got to do it. You can't show weakness or vulnerability. And so when I got into this space, I was reminded of Carl Jung's saying, no tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. And now I'm not here to talk about heaven or hell, but the real point there is the deeper you go into your unconscious healing, the more light you can bring in and the higher up you can transcend your own karma. In fact, that karma, once you heal it, it can become your dharma. You're a much more holistic, well-rounded person. And I was so far from that. Then, of course, you'll see on my background of my Zoom is the superconscious. Well, that's the collective consciousness. That's the energy that before you were born, it was here. It was waiting for you to be born, to come in and to support you in the spiritual side of yourself, the intuition, the highest and best version of yourself, your zone of genius, the things that you love to do without even thinking, without even getting paid for it. It's also your psychic abilities. Like my husband with plant medicine, he developed massive, mad, amazing skills. He can talk to ghosts and to dead people, and he can channel, and he can do all these things, again, with the help of plant medicine. Not everybody has those exact gifts. Everybody's got unique gifts, but they're all lying dormant inside of us. And so to really tap into that, I was really locked. I was locked down. I was so stuck in the ego and being driven, my thoughts, my feelings, my actions, by the wounds of my unconscious mind. And even though I worked with subconscious mind coaches, guys, it didn't do much for me. It just didn't. And I apologize, I'm actually getting a new image of this. This is a little blurry, but we also have 3 brains in our body that plant medicine impacts. Okay, a lot of times, again, people focus on the brain in our head. Well, that's all fine and good, but you can actually be brain dead and still be alive if your heart is still beating. The heart is actually the largest brain in our body, 40,000 neurons, super important, helping you stay alive. And yet most people focus on the head brain. So what the plant medicine helped me do is to break into my emotions. I was so numb that when my brother died in 2020 and my mom died in 2020, right after him, I didn't cry. I was so numb. My emotions were shut down. I couldn't even feel any positive emotions, let alone negative. And you've got to be able to feel the negative in order to feel the positive. That's what people are waking up to right now. I also lost sight of my dreams. So my heart brain, it was like I had a brick wall around my heart due to life, trauma, death, grief, and just being on that egoic hamster wheel. Then there's the gut brain. That's your in your digestive tract. Really important. Most people don't realize how much the plant medicine is impacting the gut brain, which also actually is all about instinct, intuition, and is something that can help, as long as your digestion is clear and you can actually metabolize your emotions like anger, fear, shame. You've got to be able to metabolize them in order to live your highest and best version of yourself. And most people don't know that that's actually a huge part of what plant medicine can do for you. So the biggest component that I was reminded of probably about 6 or 7 months in to my 2021 journey with deep dive plant medicine and microdosing is that we've got to purge physically. We've got to release. The body keeps the score. Peter Levine also has a great book about trauma and how animals, they actually allow the trauma to fully be released through their body in the moment. But as humans, because we have the reptilian brain and we have, the unconscious, and we have, a whole different purpose here on the planet, it's really, really hard to release that trauma. It can be, even when you're coming out of the birthing canal, people have had trauma. Even in utero, people have had trauma. I found that through plant medicine. And every time you didn't get your bottle or your blanket as a baby, trauma, micro trauma, micro trauma, micro trauma. Then you add all of the other stuff that happens for us, all the way through age of 8. And our bodies are already riddled and keeping the score in all different, our organs, tissues, body parts, things of that nature. So what plant medicine does really, really well, and this is still on the science part, is to help you purge. My favorite purgatory medicines are ayahuasca, psilocybin. They actually help you vomit and poop it out, and pee for that matter, as well as cry. You can have shivering. You can have all sorts of things. This is more on the deep dives. We'll get to the microdosing and talk about the difference of that. But the whole idea is to help your body heal, to release. Sometimes people are just really, really tired after they use plant medicine, and it's just a sign of healing and stress and trauma leaving the body. There's also, shaking. There's different ways to have those kinds of trauma release, even screaming. I've done some of that. There's a lot of different tools that I didn't learn about until really my second year in, that helps us process that trauma, helps us then purge it in whatever format that we do. Instead of what I was doing was drinking over it, working over it, sleeping over it, social media, numbing over it. I could go on and on and on and on. Another one that's not a psychedelic though is combo frog medicine. I'm studying and training with that now. It's a frog poison from the skin of frogs in the Amazon. It also is phenomenal. One of my favorite ones. I've done it almost 10 times now to help with releasing that score from different organs through vomit, as well as pooping, as well as crying, as well as screaming. It's helping you process all of that through the human body. Then, of course, the spiritual side of it, shamans have been using this for thousands and thousands of years. Psilocybin mushrooms and the mycelium network have been proven to have been around for millions, if not billions, depending on who you talk to and what you study. They were here long before us as humans. It's actually been believed that that's actually how the caveman developed the brain into the brains that we have today. But shamans use it as their spiritual medicine, as their medicine to actually heal dis-ease, prevent dis-ease, but then also to go within. I just finished the book Psychedelic Gospels by Jerry Brown. Again, controversial, maybe triggering a little, but they say some of the greatest teachers and gods and ascended masters of all time, including, yes, Jesus himself, used mushrooms to help with holy sacraments in their spiritual communities. So my question is, and I know most of you are here for information, so this is really a question if you are listening on the recording, or if you are a client of mine, possibly right now using microdosing, you got to ask yourself, what seeds are you planting with plant medicine? And what will you unearth? Because what most people I've seen in this space, there's a lot of people who do it recreationally. I don't recommend that. For me, it's all about healing and sacred practice. Like literally there are psychedelic churches being born. There's different Native American churches that use peyote, ayahuasca or ayahuasca churches, with a Church of Saint Daime that I've been able to be fortunate enough to attend, where it's their sacrament. But the whole idea is to cleanse and release that which no longer serves you, which can be scary. It can bring up stuff that's really, really intense. So those are the questions I'd encourage you to think about is, what seeds am I planting with this planting? And what will I unearth? And what are you open to? Because that's all about being intentional and not just seeing this as a hobby or a fly-by-night quick fix. Every flower must grow through dirt. So again, that's part of the shadow work. That's part of what's going to come up through the plant medicine. It's going to be gentle with you at first, but if you do it longer than say like a month or a one time, you're going to release a lot. I know Aaron Rodgers did a lot of healing with ayahuasca. If you know any famous people, Joe Rogan talks about it every day on his podcast. Gwyneth Paltrow has talked a lot about it. There's even the series with Nicole Kidman and Melissa McCarthy, Nine Perfect Strangers. That one's, of course, has some things in there that I can definitely tell you I don't agree with, but the concepts and the ideas of what's possible are pretty spot on inside that miniseries. So what did I get to heal with proper guidance? And I'm going to give you some examples. My mother-father wound. So I've had a lot of trauma in utero, and even before my mom was born, I actually embodied some of the trauma. Thanks to plant medicine, I had an experience where I was actually reliving 5 years before I was born, her driving the car into a train because she wanted to kill herself. I wasn't even born yet, but that was in my body. My body had kept the score from her. That was a huge breakthrough for me. Other times with ayahuasca, I experienced being in utero with my mom, where she was in the mental institution where she actually had me in Cherokee, Iowa, where I was born in a hospital, but because she was in a mental institution in Cherokee, that's where I was born. And I got to relive that experience. I actually thought under the medicine that I was in a mental institution and I was in a loop. So I got to re-experience the trauma of what it was like to be her in that experience, and I got to purge it. With the help of San Pedro, I got to relive some of the patriarchal masculine shame and wounds in my family. I got to experience it. I got to see it. I got to feel it leaving my body. I actually physically threw myself down on the ground and was crying and weeping and releasing it. Ancestral trauma. We all have it. We have 7 generations on both sides, mom and dad. Even if you didn't know them, if you maybe were adopted, it's still there. It's something that I have learned from the medicine that we chose to come into these bodies to heal for our ancestors. I've sat with my ancestors now countless times, but the real 2 quick stories that I want to share with you is that the first one was with ayahuasca. And I had an opportunity to ask them, why have I gone through so much heartache? Why have I chose to go through so much suffering? What am I here to learn? What am I here to heal? And they showed me underneath the medicine that I chose and agreed to come in. My contract with this body in this lifetime was to experience shame at the deepest level and guilt. And they showed me my grandfathers, and they showed me patriarchs, and they showed me the matriarchs. And they said, thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking this on. Even though it caused you a lot of pain and a lot of trauma in this body, we're here to help you release it. And so at that moment, after I cried and I said, thank you. Can I be done with this now? Carrying this burden. And they said, yes. They laughed. I could feel them. I could see them. Were visuals and audibles, clairaudience and clairsentience helped me develop those abilities. And they said, go ahead. And so I got up, I went to the purge bucket, and I vomited like you would not believe. I could still feel it coming up. Like it was all the way from my sacral chakra, where a lot of shame and guilt can get stored. And so I was purging it, not only for me, but for them and for my children and for my children's children and for the collective. I also, with mushrooms, with ancestral trauma, I got to the root cause of alcoholism in my family. I got to be able to understand the original root when during the Christian conversion times, when they came into Germany and were forcing people to convert from paganism and polytheism and basically saying feast or famine, die or live, kind of a big deal, right? And so one night my ancestors were drinking a lot of mead, having fun and festivities, because that's who they are. They're musical, fun, joy, laughter filled, ceremonial mead consuming people. And they had so much fun. They stayed up so late. They were a little hungover in the morning and not alert when the Christians came and of course, killed some of the villagers, burned some of the village. And my ancestors, of course, carried that shame and guilt like a cross. And that passed on down into me. I was able to work through some major digestive issues. I had a somatic release that inspired 30 days of physical purging of diarrhea, 30 days. I went to the doctors, they couldn't do anything. I went to my acupuncturist, nothing. I just had to write it out. It was part of the purging of the trauma that my body had kept. And sure enough, I did San Pedro on day 31, and boom, it was so much better. Maybe TMI, but my poop was really good, really solid, which was, a big deal with my autoimmune disease. Most autoimmune diseases, leaky gut syndrome, candida, overgrowth in the gut, all trauma related. And I was able to heal that. And that actually inspired my 35 pounds of weight loss that I have still kept off and haven't looked back, because I got to the roots, ancestral roots of what was causing me in this frame, in this body, in this lifetime to be, stuck in the past. I had digestive issues my whole life, by the way. I also had the addictive behaviors. I already talked about that. I became conscious of my trauma responses. Didn't have that before plant medicine. I was so unconscious. I worked through a lot of grief and loss. I had last story about my experience, but it's very profound. Probably my third or fourth deep dive with plant medicine. I got to see all of my friends who committed suicide. I got to see my brother and other people who died of addiction. I got to see and feel their love for me and their request, and they're cheering on and saying, you're here to heal things that we never could. These wounds that we numbed so badly because of society, because of dogma, because of patriarchy, and because all we had was big pharma and the psychotherapy model. You're doing something that is of indigenous cultural tribes and gets to the root cause and is here to help prevent, but also, I'm going to say it, pretty much cure. When you get to the root cause, anything, your body has the innate ability to heal. And so at that time, I felt very unworthy of that visit. I judged myself. But at that moment, I knew there was something there. There was a message for my life purpose. Because there was times where I wanted to die. The medicine also showed me that, my fear of death was real. They talk about that. A lot of cancer patients will take the medicine and no longer fear death. Well, now I understand why. When you're able to commune with the dead and have these conversations and to have them cheer you on and realize that you're no longer alone, it'll change you. It'll change you. And so besides the fact that my husband became a ghost whisperer and now I can talk to my past loved ones anytime, it reframed my relationship with grief. And being able to have that impact for my marriage, my children, and friendships. 2 years ago, I didn't have any real friends. Honestly, I was a really, really bad friend. And so to be able to process all of the above helped me develop love for myself and compassion so that I could be a better friend to myself, so I could be a better friend to others. I could love myself so I could have a bigger capacity to love others, which is what the last thing I'll share the medicine showed me is we're here to simply love ourselves and love one another. That's really, if anybody's trying to figure out their life purpose, that's really what we're here for as a human race. And frankly, I don't know that we've done the greatest job. And I feel like this awakening is helping us wake up to how can we love ourselves more? How can we love one another more? So type in the chat if you're still with me, just making sure. That was a lot I just shared. Just let me know that you're still with me. I'm going to grab a drink of water really quick. Okay, awesome. So I felt like I didn't tell as many stories last time because I wanted to keep it more to the facts, but here's the honest truth, guys. My why that has made me cry gallons and gallons and gallons of tears the past couple of years. That's the importance of what these sacred plants can do, more than what you hear Joe Rogan talk about or any books you might read that's all about the science. That's all fine and good, but it's really so much more than that, so much more. So these are some trauma responses that I am now started working with clients on in microdosing and also in deep dives, to be able to really wake up. I just want to remind you, there's no good or bad. There's no good or bad. It's really just all about what are you learning on this journey called life, as Prince said, dearly beloved, we're gathered here today to get through this thing called life. Which reminds me, I've seen Prince a dozen times, Patrick Swayze, Chris Farley, Chris Cornell, like Robin Williams, they all came to me under plant medicine too. But anyway, I don't want to keep telling you stories, but to be able to understand when you have an anger outburst, that it's a trauma response. It's not about you. It's just about your unconscious mind and your wounds and your ego trying to protect you, these knee-jerk responses. I didn't understand that before plant medicine, even with hours and hours of psychotherapy and hours of grief counseling, right? Being a workaholic, overthinking, anxiety, panic, OCD, difficulty sitting still, perfectionist, that was definitely my number one. My number two is fawn, people pleaser, lack of identities, no boundaries. I so had unhealthy boundaries, texting 24/7, available 7 days a week for everyone but myself and my family. I was overwhelmed, addicted to overwhelm, actually. It's another addiction I talk about quite often with my clients. And the codependent thing. A lot of marriages, I believe, end because of codependence, because we lose ourselves inside of our partnership. Even business partnerships can be imbalanced and unhealthy because we lose our sovereignty. We give it away. We give our power away. Being conscious of that helped me go from a really codependent marriage and attracting a lot of codependent, kind of like controlling mentors, and losing myself to, oh, wait, I really do have sovereignty. I really can think for myself. I can say no. Those little things can make a huge difference in your life, you think, right? And then freeze, difficulty making decisions, stuck, disassociation. That's why I turn to alcohol a lot of times, to shut down my intuition, to shut down my inner child, disassociate from what was happening around me and kind of like check out. Same thing with working too much. There was a lot of numbing going on for me, and I see it with my clients as well. So these are the things that plant medicine can bring to your consciousness with a guide, with support. Definitely not something to be working on by yourself with plant medicine. Okay, really, really important to remember that. We also are, spiritual beings having this physical experience, and it's just, I already talked about this, but I just wanted to remind you of that holistic triangle of really remembering that we can't focus too much on the mind. We can't focus too much on the body. We can't focus too much on the spirit. I believe that there's this transformational triangle of how can you fuel your mind, your body, and your spirit with the plant medicine. So I have my clients set mental, physical, and spiritual goals with the medicine, so they don't get too caught up in the mind, because again, a lot of people are obsessed with the mind, the head brain. But you got to be working with all three of the brains, and all three of those brains are connected inside of this triangle, as well as helping you to remember to keep the ego in check, make friends with the ego. A lot of people talk about ayahuasca helps you dissolve the ego. As some people say, ego doesn't exist, it's an illusion. So everybody's got their thought on this, but at the end of the day, if you didn't have an ego, you'd go to the grocery store naked, right? And probably get arrested. So there is a healthy ego that the medicine can help you with, as well as helping you with the healthy unconscious / subconscious, which is where the emotions are housed that come out and manifest physically a lot of times. And then, of course, your spiritual self. We are much, much more than these physical bodies, right? So the health benefits are endless. They truly are, because this is sacred indigenous culture, tribal medicine. It's working with your body. You take the medicine, I take the medicine. We're all going to have different experiences. It's not like subscriptions or prescriptions where, of course, then there's all these side effects, right? Now, plant medicine does have side effects, and I'll talk about that, or you can ask me questions about that later. But the benefits are endless, from better focus, emotional openness, higher levels of creativity. Again, that's the right side of the brain being woken up. Help quitting people with coffee and other substances, alcohol. I've had really good success myself around having a healthy relationship with alcohol, but also having a healthy relationship with a lot of food and drink. Relief from depression, more energy, relief from menstrual pain. I do believe menopause, PMS, all of those things have a lot to do with a suppressed divine feminine, which is making a comeback right now, and which is why it's so important to activate that right side of the brain. Less anxiety in social situations, which is a lot of times why often people will drink or emotionally eat at networking events or with family. Heightened spiritual awareness, connecting with your guides, connecting with your ancestors, connecting with any divine entities or beings or galactics, whatever you believe in. You can have a deeper, richer, more conscious, energetic connection to that. I've had, believe it or not, people improve their libido, their sex life. Again, we're talking about clearing chakras and connecting deeper with your heart. When you feel more alive, then you are just generally more intimate and have all of those deeper, richer potentials. Another thing that's really important, I got to bring this up. I believe the plants are making a comeback. There's a lot of things shifting in the world because of this age of Aquarius that we have entered into, depending on who you talk to. It's either already started or it's starting or it's in the process. So right now, a lot of people are waking up to their shadow work. It's being forced upon them. People can't hide. If they do, then they could possibly be leaning heavily on their addictions, dying, really, really sad stuff, guys, really, really sad stuff. But if you're willing and able, working with plant medicine to help with the shadow work can then help you become extra powerful. People can uncover your psychic gifts at an even safer, better, more empowered rate with sacred plants. You can help radically redefine your purpose like I have. Now, 2 years ago, I made tons of money, but I wasn't happy. Now, I don't care how much money I make. I am just so excited to have meaning and purpose. And then the money comes, right? People are less willing to compromise in love. That's why there's a lot of breakups. I just heard about another breakup yesterday in a relationship, but it's all about coming into your truth. Sacred plants can help you because, again, they can help you fall in love with yourself, release the shadow work. And the more you do that, the more you can become a more magnetizing partner for the right partner. And who here doesn't want that, right? So plants can help you in this kind of like this shifting sands of the world because it's harder to conform. I manifested an autoimmune disease in my throat. One more story for you, right? Because I was scared to speak my truth. That's also ancestral, by the way. This disease, quote unquote, runs in the family. And under mushrooms, I actually, it was actually Ayahuasca. Won't go into the details of that, but I had died in many lifetimes, burned at the stake or strangled because of speaking my truth. And so I've conformed a lot or died, right? Just like my ancestors and the whole conversion thing. But now under the plant medicine, they said, you're not going to die in this lifetime. So just go ahead, be fearless, go out there and speak your truth. So I really have transformed myself and want to help you transform yourself if this is your path so that you don't conform and put yourself in a box and try to be someone that you're not. You have something unique to offer to the world. You have something unique to offer to the world, and it's your time to shine and to rise up and believe in yourself. A couple of quick client testimonials. I've got lots, and these are microdosing clients. Gina, who is turning to me mostly because of just not living her best life, turning to alcohol, having a lot of grief, She said, I can't believe in 30 days I found my creativity back. I'm getting shit done, checking off the to-do list, drinking way less alcohol, and is way more present. That was just 30 days after using microdosing. Craig says, I feel more conscious, more aware, and way less stress. He's got a high stress job, very, very high level stress. And I was often triggered by a stressful client. And now I've actually found ways where this client and the situations can bring me joy. So the external triggers are now being shifted and transformed inside so that it changes his perspective. Now, these are pretty profound, and I will also tell you pretty rare. 30-day testimonials I don't share often because there's a lot more work that has got to be done in order to get lasting results. So that's where I want to talk about the do's and don'ts with sacred plants. Okay. So I went and shared with you all the beautiful stuff, the mental, the physical, the spiritual, the science, but there's a lot of things that I didn't know that 2 years ago that I wish I would have known. I threw a lot of money away, and it wasn't away, right? There was no mistakes. And it was my lessons to learn so that I can come and in turn teach other people. Because I probably spent around 60 grand on this journey, full disclosure, because I didn't know what I didn't know. And the first 6 months, the medicine was very gentle with me. But a couple examples, like I started microdosing. I bought it from a very trusted source. Amazing. Actually, I still use this source. But it was so scary to me. Like some stuff was coming up, emotional things, fears, anxieties. Even though it helped me feel better and slow down my type A, it actually had me sit my butt down. And I remember still to this day shutting my computer off and not wanting to drink alcohol because it was just like really interesting. It was like I was in slow motion, which for me was a big deal. But then after that, it would get scary. So I stopped microdosing because I didn't have a guide. I didn't have a coach. I didn't have support. I didn't know what I was doing. And then I went into the deep dive space, which was beautiful. The medicine was really kind and gentle to me, but I didn't know how to integrate. I didn't know how to integrate what came up for me in the ceremony. So I could cry, I could have these amazing visuals, I could get some really profound messages, but especially some of the heavier stuff that I shared with you earlier about my ancestral trauma, in utero trauma, seeing my dead friends tell me the stuff they shared with me, it was like, I don't know what to do with that. And it actually re-triggered trauma and kind of kept me in a little bit of a loop. Didn't really change my drinking. It changed it because I was doing ceremonies, because then you have to follow a special diet, whether you're microdosing or doing deep dives. So I really realized that I had to have a guide. I had to have support. And I also had to figure out more ways to release the trauma in a safe, guided, supportive way. So here's some best practices, some tips for you. This is also stuff that I now coach on for people. I found a breathwork practice to help me process any of the satisfying feels, the scary stuff, right? If I had an anxiety attack, for example, because the stuff that was shown to me was pretty intense, I could do breathwork. I also found, besides breathwork, Kundalini yoga helps realign the spine, the chakras. It has techniques like the breath of fire, still breath work, but just different. And being able to release, purge through that way also helped quiet the mind. Another thing that was key to support my journey was developing a meditation practice. That's also the benefits of working with the medicine, since it helped me quiet the mind. So much more spacious now. So much more. The ego is chilling out a lot more, but the plant medicine by itself didn't do that. In fact, the plant medicine woke up the ego, and the ego would freak out more. So what I had to do is get into my own my own, not following, someone else's meditation plan, because I'd been meditating for 7 years, but to really be able to develop my own practice, trusting my own intuition and developing that relationship with my higher self, also known as the superconscious, so that I could take in whatever was coming through and just allow it to flow through me through a consistent daily meditation practice, which, oh, by the way, took me well over a year to develop. And now I'm like, I can't live without my meditation, my daily routine, which also I learned with the help of a guide and a coach, and develop that emotional muscle, that intelligence, that accountability to be able to process the trauma, process the anxiety, process the addictive behaviors, hold myself when I fell short, right? And to be able to develop that emotional intelligence on what to do when I still had a trauma response. So to help myself journal, to acknowledge that. Again, the plant medicine won't do that for you. That's where you've got to have a guide. Another thing I'd encourage you is don't cheap out on this path. This is why it's also not for everyone. I know some people will say, well, you know what? I can buy mushrooms for 40 bucks and just sit at home and do it by myself, right? No, don't do that. Unless you want to potentially have what happened for me. I opened up the gates of hell and had nightmares, and the veil is thin. So you got to set up sacred space. You want to have a guide to be there. I had some really dark experiences, even with microdosing. And in that process, if I didn't have a guide to help me process it in the moment, and they have all these different tools, my husband and I now, we lead ceremony. We have, so many tools to help you. So if you're in that space, again, whether you're micro or macro, at least at the beginning, don't do it by yourself just to save money. And just because your friend might invite you over and they are maybe charging you a little bit, like they say, your homie down the street, it's meant to be sacred. It's not recreational. If you really want to heal and you really want to transform your life and you really want to evolve and transcend and raise your consciousness and your awareness. So the average price for a journey is probably like $400 per day, give or take. The other thing that I've learned is, this is just me, my experience, but I've also talked and been in the space now and sat over 40 deep dives and done microdosing almost straight for a year, and now coached lots of people on this, is interview the people that you're going to sit with. Where do they get the medicine? How sacred is the setting? Do they allow for chit chat and touching and conversation, which I've seen some really, really bad traumatic things happen. I'm not a fan. Different strokes for different folks. But it's really all about you and your inner journey on the mat in the experience. Now, I've done journeys with my husband, but we started out on the mats, our own journey, our own experience. And then there was a time and a place during the ceremony, but that was for our own marital healing, right? But we still started independently. Otherwise, if you can transfer energies, you can transfer trauma. I've had it happen. And where I'm like, I don't feel myself. And it was because the sacred space and setting wasn't safe. Because the veil is thin and there are dark energies and things that come through. So you really just want to make sure you talk to whoever's the host. How do they get the medicine? How do they source it? Even ask for pictures of their growing process. How long have they been sitting with people? And what is the setting like? Okay. And again, you can start putting questions in the Q&A feature, guys, because I'm almost done. The other thing is, besides not, just doing it cheaply, doing it yourself, plant medicine works best with lifestyle assessments and alterations, proper nutrition, digestive health support. Like with my alcohol example, I did make shifts slowly with accountability. But then I also needed to better understand my digestion. I did some work with some acupuncture, some herbs, some superfoods, some cellular detoxification. I really became more mindful. I became more spacious. I got into a habit on the pandemic where we just kept ordering food, and now we shifted to the lifestyle of cooking more for ourselves, better understanding food is our medicine, just like the plants are food, all of those kind of like lifestyle, shutting my computer down by a certain hour, limiting the social media, limiting the news, any of those triggers or toxic relationships, just really being mindful, because when you're under the medicine, even if it's microdosing, I had a microdosing client who microdosed like 100 milligrams and that's it. She went out to a social event and boom, her triggers were up and she cried and she left the event. You also, when you're with plant medicine, obviously limiting coffee, alcohol, making sure you're hydrated, all of those kinds of things, healthy boundaries, learning how to set more of those, turning your phone off more, putting your phone in another room, maybe when you're sleeping, being able to find time to put more meditation in, but also more dancing, more play, more creativity to really embody the medicine, whether you're microdosing or doing the deep dive. The medicine is in you and it wants to move in a healthy, balanced, fun, creative, pleasurable way. And also just reminding you, it's not a quick fix. It's not a cure-all, even though I went deep end into the pool, right? I know how to do macro, heroic dosing, and micro, and I do mentorships around this now, because again, you can't do it on your own. Just remember, it's a journey. You can't rush it. Even though I just shared those 2 testimonials, those are 2 of like 20 of like the best of the best. Everyone else that's microdosing with me is still on their path. So I'd say it's like a 6 to 12 month journey if you're serious about transformation, if you're serious about lasting change, if you're serious about, not looking back and repeating your ancestral pasts, your traumas, your childhood triggers, the definition of insanity, right? So does anybody have any questions? I'm just going to see what else I got here. Oh, I have a couple more things on. One of the things that helps with not being re-triggered and re-traumatized, I don't even know if that's a word, but when you're in the medicine space, if you have a guide and someone who knows what they're doing, they will also help you take aligned action. So a lot of times the primordial cause of dis-ease or depression, anxiety, all of it, suicide, is not living your true nature and purpose. Hands down. I'm studying Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine, and everyone I've studied now, because I've got different certifications, they're all saying the same thing. So shutting down your intuition, not listening to yourself, not living your true nature and purpose, not setting healthy boundaries, all of those things, right? But the other thing is to develop that muscle after you receive messages from the medicine, whether it's micro or heroic dose. What are you doing to take aligned action? Like 1% better. Like for me, being able to process the release of the shame and the fear from my ancestors was actually just to take aligned action to love myself more and to just become more aware of my ancestral roots, which led to more learning, more expansion, more growth, right? If you want to cut back on alcohol, then taking that aligned action to just then say, one day I'm going to choose to drink lemon water or bubbly water, just one step daily to build that muscle of going from being out of alignment to coming back in with love, grace, compassion, and having that support, because that's where a lot of people some people I've talked to, they're like, oh, well, people just get addicted to plant medicine. It's actually not possible unless you're using it as an escape. Then I've seen it where people are just going back and staying in a loop because they're not integrating, staying in integrity with the medicine and what the medicine is showing them, and coming back into your definition of alignment. So if there's no questions, I'm going to go ahead and define a couple more things. Oh, sorry. I missed the questions. Here we go. Is that, yeah, yes. Oh, Doreen, yes. Is this something that would be beneficial to someone who wants to increase creativity? Guess what? My husband is now a channeled painter, and plant medicine helped him. He did one journey, and before you know it, boom, now he's channeling prints. He's channeling artists. He's channeling the dead. So yes, number one testimonial right there in my house. If you want to come see our art studio, yes. For me, I joined choir. I started singing. I started drumming. I'm writing so much more. I've seen my clients who have just felt a reawakening of their creative center. And again, that can manifest in different ways, but art related, absolutely. Absolutely. That's one of my favorites, because the artist, again, remember, is that right side of the brain that's waking up when you use plant medicine. And then to be able to take what you get from the plant medicine and then draw it out. I can coach people on that to help them to develop that even deeper, faster. There's also techniques that I've worked on the sacral chakra, because that's the sex organs, the creative center, to be able to help cleanse and clear that, which can happen under deep dives, specifically, not so much micro, but deep dives. Then there's a lot of healing, because a lot of us, especially women, but men, have had sexual trauma too. We've worked with guys on that, where you just shut down that creativity. And so absolutely, art related 100%. How do you justify taking the spaciousness when there is so much to do? Yeah. Well, we are spiritual beings, right? And we've lived in a society that's fed us a bunch of lies that the more you do, the more you have, the better you are. So I was in that lie. I believed that lie, and it could have killed me. So for me, there's actually no justification other than I wanted to live. And I knew that if I didn't create the space, the world abhors a vacuum. You know, if you're stuck in the doing, that's a scarcity mindset. And I discovered that, even though I was making tons of money, right? Because there's always more to do. It's just, if you're not being, you got to be before you do, before you have. Once you come from your truth, everything opens up for you. Once you come and give yourself rest and spaciousness, the universe is watching. And that's what the plants, I believe, taught me first, was to be. And honestly, then stuff just didn't interest me anymore that I used to do. I was like, I don't want to do that. But it took me a year of a lot of deep dives and course corrections along the way. Doing is a choice. And that's where the right side of the brain comes in. Healthy boundaries, working on that trauma response of people pleasing. A lot of people do so much because it's a people pleasing response. So that's my answer. Hopefully that was helpful. Awesome. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll quickly define. So I'll put this up on the slide so you guys can remember this, and then we'll finish it up. I could have started with this, but I really just wanted to give you the foundational passion and principles, the science and the do's and the don'ts, and the understanding of what's possible. Because it's really about microdosing, macrodosing. It's a potato patata, just depends on the person, and also what you can invest and how much time and energy. Micro is putting your toe in. It's like 100 milligrams of psilocybin or San Pedro or ayahuasca. Most of my clients do less than 500 milligrams. I also have ayahuasca drops. So people can have the drops instead of, you can't really do capsules as well. But that's 500 milligrams or less. Macro is 500 milligrams for those who are really, really sensitive, maybe super duper lightweights, all the way up to 6-7 grams or 3 to 4 cups of ayahuasca or 3 cups of San Pedro. Everybody's a little different on that. But that's also known as heroic dose or deep dive. And again, I believe neither one of these should be done on your own. Quick tips, if you're microdosing or macrodosing, is really thinking about intentions. Energy flows where intention goes. That's science and spirituality right there. So what will I let go of? What will I release? What will I call in? How will I also stay the course? Because as things come up for you to be seen and shown to you from the unconscious, what are you going to do with that? And so that's where coming into alignment is a huge component, a huge part of the success. A lot of people will forget, even if it's a brilliant thing. I've journaled about all of my journeys and a lot of my microdosing, so I could tell the stories that I told today. And if we had another hour, I'd tell you how I navigated the Murphy's Law moments where life came and my self-sabotaging beliefs and limiting beliefs and behaviors tried to undo what the medicine taught me. So for me, it was breath work, Kundalini yoga, meditation, helping me stay the course for what I was seeing, what I was experiencing. So we already said to put questions in the Q&A feature. Last call for questions. If you want to follow me more and learn more, tune into my podcast, Healthy and Wealthy and Wise. Every week I have 1, sometimes 3 shows. My vision is to help 1,000 people be and become super conscious creators of their best health, their best wealth, and their best wisdom through plant medicine and also without. I'm a specialist, but I know it's not for everybody. I just highly encourage it for those who are ready to commit. This is not a hobby. This is not I'm just going to check it out and kick tires. This is a commitment. This is a sacred relationship that you're building with deep, long-standing indigenous cultures, wisdom for true healing. Like I said, so whoever's still here, all right, I'm going to make note of who is still here. You guys, and only you, and actually do me a favor, guys. If you want the slides, your gift for Matt, Doreen, Don, and Shanna, because you're still here. Sorry, whoever just left. Email me now, Lois@loiscoffee.com, so I don't forget. Lois@loiscoffee.com if you want the slides. Okay. And then I want to offer up to you, if you or someone wants to do a jumpstart and just put a toe in, my microdosing 30-day jumpstart program can be the key to unlocking and opening that door to true transformation like I've experienced. Everyone receives 2 one-on-one calls, unlimited texting support on an encrypted app, Tuesday through Saturday, actually. Online classes to process and integrate what's coming up for you. And it also includes the medicines. And I have 4 trusted sources. I would consult with you first on a free consultation to decide which of these medicines is for you. I start most people with psilocybin. Ayahuasca drops is something I just found that's beautiful. Ayahuasca is only for advanced people because it's very intense. And then, of course, for those of you who are familiar with Wachuma San Pedro cactus, I also have access to that. So now you don't have to do the research. You don't have to interrogate, save you time and money. And the cost for this also, like I said, includes my breathwork, Kundalini yoga, meditation classes, super conscious creation, shadow work classes, and nutrition classes that I'm always adding every month. We have 2 classes a week to help you heal and integrate what the medicine is showing for you. So that's included Instead of paying $2,000 for this, it's just $400 one-time investment for 30 days. So I covet your referrals. I covet your sharing this with others that you know and care about, especially if they struggle with grief, trauma, and addiction. Those are my favorites. But then because of my husband's abilities, if they want to tap into their spiritual essence, their guides, talking to the great beyond, he's here to help with that at a deeper level. And I do recommend you only consider the 30-day option if you're serious to consider possibly going beyond that, because 30 days can only do so much. Yeah, sorry, Doreen, I almost missed your question. If you have any questions, put them in the Q&A feature just so I don't miss them. But yes, oh yeah, all of my microdosing clients are virtual. All of my microdosing clients are virtual. I don't do any in person for microdosing. Absolutely. So I have clients all over the country. I can serve people in Canada. It's a little tricky, but I can. And then I even have possibilities of working with people in Mexico, but North America only. And then, just so you're aware, I do also, with my husband, who's a shaman, support heroic dose journeys with psilocybin, planning an ayahuasca retreat here, hopefully later this year. I do also have the opportunity for one-on-one mentorship. If you saw what happened for me, 35 pounds gone, addictions gone, a lot of healing and deep dive. I think I've reversed my age at least a decade. Healing ancestral lineages. If you really want to go deep, I am also offering up one-on-one mentorship for that as well. You can also email me at lois@loiscovey.com with questions, or book a free consultation on my site, which I'll drop in the chat if you want to talk about microdosing or any of the things. We offer our heroic dose journeys monthly in San Diego, Phoenix, June 10th. We're going to heal the father wound and work on that just in time for Father's Day. I know personally how important that is. Summer, we're hoping to do one in Minnesota. We're still looking for a venue. So open to also traveling to other places, Colorado, wherever have medicine, we'll travel. And remember, guys, no matter where you go, there you are. If you've done everything like I had done, and no matter what happens, it just seems like these addictive behaviors, traumas, life keeps following you and you want to go deeper. I'm here for you, because as within, so without, and definitely want to make sure that you continue to transcend, expand your consciousness, grow, develop, and become the highest and best version of yourself. Because as they say, your past will be your future until you have the courage to create a new one. And this is a very brave and courageous path to choose. I do want to acknowledge that. It's not for the faint of heart. And there was times where I wanted to give up. And if I didn't have that guide, if I didn't have that support, I don't know where I'd be today. So I want to be that guide and support for you or those you care about. Thanks, Don. Any questions, guys, before we drop it? 2:11. Thanks for staying. Awesome. Stay the course. Happy full moon, lunar eclipse. It's going to be massive, super intense, a lot of shadow work coming up this week. So use your tools. And if I can be of service or support to help you navigate these rough waters a little more gently, a little more kindly, with love and compassion, ease and grace, I want to be that person and that guide for you. Have a beautiful day. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Don. Thanks, Shanna. Banana. See you, Doreen. Appreciate you and your husband as well for being here today. Oops, that's right. I was going to actually, forgive me. Let me, although you all probably should have this. I'm dropping the link in the chat for everyone. If someone has not had a microdosing consult, because I know a couple of you have already, I do give that one-time free consult. So you can even share that link. My website, I'm updating it every month. I will have monthly classes, so there'll be one coming up, and there's a couple of podcast episodes on there that tell a little bit more about my journey and what I've seen under the medicine and what I've learned as well. So grab that link quick if you want it. Otherwise, I'll be emailing that out to you. And thanks for those of you that have been watching on the replay. All right. Bye-bye for now.